Hi, hello. We should be live. We should be audible. We should have captions. All those things should be true. Additionally, what also should be true is we should be live over on YouTube as well. All of these statements should be true. Awesome, awesome. Glad to hear it. Thank you. Okay, so welcome back to part two of the basically our actual play planning is basically kind of what I'm calling this. This is rather than some of my other streams, which are about planning, where we're kind of looking at it from more of a theoretical basis. These are streams where we're actually taking it from much more of a basically an actual practical perspective in terms of I'm actually planning out something we're actually going to be using. For example, this campaign will be used at the end of this week on Friday, March 15th, so 3 days from now, starting at 12 Eastern Daylight Time now. We will be live basically here on this channel, and we're going to be doing an actual play session. We will have following basically we'll have our players, as you can see here, playing through. They're going to be playing through the scenario, which has been basically established, which is kind of somewhat established in the back of the book of the Hardwired Island book. That is the game series we're doing, Hardwired Island, which is a retro future cyberpunk adventure. Basically, if you're curious about more about how that system, what that system is, basically know the fact that this is essentially part two of our planning session, and as such, it will be basically there are two other videos where we talk about this campaign. The first is the first video where we talk a lot more about cyberpunk and running cyberpunk games and how that works and how basically how Hardwired Island is built out. And then this one, which is much more basically a second one, the first part of this series, which is a more in-depth look at actually building out characters, locations, and things like that, and how I would build out those ideas in. Basically, we talked about the map, basically about getting locations on the map and things like that, adding players, essentially setting up the world that our players are going to be playing in. Hello, Wolf Mom. So we are basically this session. Basically, I talked about at the end of the last one. This session is going to be taking those characters and locations and things like that we've built out, and I'm going to be going a little bit deeper into how we are going to kind of interweave those, mix those together, how we're going to want to give our players the opportunity to kind of take part in this community, and what that's going to look like in terms of, okay, we built basically the locations and the players. We're kind of basically both of those are pre-generated. We talked about last time, both of those would more likely be in a longer term campaign. Those would be generated in a session zero type situation where you're wanting to build out those players and the community and things like that. You might want to have the players giving input on in terms of where they think their players are going to fit into it. For example, in this basically Marcia Stretch, which is a LGBTQ type community in basically on the Grand Cross station in this particular district, and so you've got several different locations we've built out, and we've added in some characters, notes, things like that. Like Maru enjoys hanging out at the Club Eternity. We also had basically the where is it? The Nice Slice Gallery, where basically Seong basically has an antagonistic relationship with the couple that owns it, et cetera, et cetera. So we've kind of built in some of that. Some of that would have been stuff that basically we would have talked to our characters, our players, and basically kind of built that out as we go, building that relationship out. Again, we're doing this as kind of a one-shot type situation. We're looking for this to probably be run in a couple of hours. Basically, not a couple of hours. Basically, 2 to 4 hours is probably what we're aiming for. So that usually means if we aim for 2 to 4 hours, it usually takes 5, but that includes things like breaks and getting up and moving around and basically chatting and things like that. Games are a social situation, so a lot of the times you have those things, and people basically want to talk about what's new in their life, things like that. And that's always the GM kind of basically the battle of the GM. Basically, are you a hardliner type GM who it's 301? Basically, all non-table talk, basically all table talk that is not game related must cease at this point. Or are you hey, basically get everyone kind of warmed up, talking to each other, basically sharing stuff and things like that, and so it becomes a little basically it's a little bit more of a social experience as opposed to we are here for this game and that's what we're going to play. Um, Obviously, if you let the social stuff go on for too long, it just turns into a dinner party. And so you do have to put your foot down at some point and guide the topic of conversation back into the game itself. I usually basically kind of monitor it, watch the flow, basically get a lot let the initial flow of basically people talking about discussing things which are important in their lives kind of ebb and flow naturally out first, and then I try to step in and be like, okay, and then I'll start with the recap and basically get people drawn back into the story if it's for longer term campaigns, and then push forward from there. But that is always going to be a personal thing, and you have to know your group. If it's a group of like random people online, you're probably going to want to be more strict, especially if it's a situation where people have paid for the time, like you're running a game at a convention or running one of those online type of basically situations where you've posted a call for players, whether it's a professional paid site or on a Discord group or something like that. You're basically those people are more there for the gaming experience and less there for the social, and therefore you should probably be a little bit stricter in terms of, hey, let's get this ball rolling, let's start things off, let's hand things out, etc., etc. So speaking of handouts and things like that, one of the first things I'm going to want to do for this is the way Hardwired Island works is they kind of have an action they have an act they don't kind of have they have an action based system, but they don't just have an action based system for just combat. This being a cyberpunk game, they obviously have an action based system for hacking, and it being a community based game, they have added an action based system for um, uh, social situations. So when I was working on this earlier, try to think do I have this still out here, or did I? I don't think I still have it out there. Basically, I talked about the fact that one of the types of things you may want to have. Here we go. I do have it in here. I've been working on this one. So basically, they have built out a series of basically different actions you can take during one of those situations. So I've created templates for those different. Basically, I've started to work on templates for those different types of events, situations that are happening that include all of the actions that can be taken during that, during that action, so that I can keep going and keep these here so that I know what I'm doing. So for example, let's go ahead and build out one for social situations. So that's because that's how we're probably going to start off the situation. Let's create a new template. We'll call this social. Social events. So let's go. We create that. Then I'm going to create a new custom field, and I call it social actions. Social encounters. I want a long field for this one. And we'll make that index 0. Go ahead and confirm that. That's dropped in our social actions long markdown box here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take... Yep, it took a little bit to pop up. Okay. So if I go to social actions in here, social matters and other bloodshed. You'll see that we have this page right here, which has a list of different actions that can be taken during a social situation. So I'm going to grab those. Because there are essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different actions that can happen. And rather than force me to look this up every time a social situation occurs, I want to have those at my fingertips whenever I'm either writing a social situation or when I'm actually playing the game. When I'm actually in that situation, I'm going to add those there. So I'm going to add those there. I'm going to add some headers here so that we can, so we can easily pull out those different sections. Placate, embarrass, threaten, and lower the mood. Okay, so I've got those in here, and I'm going to save those. So now basically I have those actions listed for me, so that when I create the event, I know what action players can be taking, and more importantly, because this is a difficulty-based system, I need to know what defenses are. So if I'm like, okay, basically if I feel like the players are going to be doing a lot of bullshitting, or they're doing a lot of charming, okay, I'm noticing, okay, cool, basically, and clever are the targets that you're basically, those are the defenses you're going against. Those are going to determine the difficulty of your rolls. For those who don't know, it's a 2d6 system in Hardwired Island. You're adding your stat bonuses plus any specialty bonuses you have. Then you're comparing it against whatever the target defense is. So it says versus cool. It's their cool defense. And basically, I just typed all of that, and I just realized I'm still hiding this. I love when I do that. Okay, here we go. The cool defense is 7 plus the basically 7 plus the basically plus the related stats. So if they have a cool of 3, their defense is 10. Double checking that. Yeah, 7 plus the ability, plus any relevant basically specialties or things like that they might have. So I've added that in there. I've added the custom field in here. Now, basically, I've got that in there because I want to keep that. Now, there are other things which define a social situation as well, which I'm going to want to keep track of in social situations. I want to remind myself I need to fill those in. So let's go ahead and add the mood. And this is going to be the so this is social scene mood. We're going to make it a short. We'll go ahead and actually put that at 0 because I'm going to want that slightly higher on the list. Let's move social actions down to, what do I have? I have mood. Is there anything other? Okay, just mood in here. Okay. So let's go ahead and move that to 1. So let's revisit this page. So there we go. Now the mood is here. Social actions are there. So basically for this, we have different levels of mood. So like there's a friendly mood. And you'll see you called it when it's called down here, like something like embarrass can only be done by basically cannot be taken in a friendly mood since Joker had expected and accepted. Basically, and so basically you want to keep track of what the mood is in the situation. So we're going to keep that field right there. So I've broken out that information so I can keep track of it. So now I've created this social template. So basically, let's go ahead and put this in action. So if I go to events, I can create an event. And I'm going to say, basically, creating events, X-Store. They get to watch me attempt to spell something. My ability to spell, of course. I know how to spell extort. Why am I? I thought I knew how to spell extort. Extort. Right. Thank you. Brain. Okay. Now basically I could say, based on a template, I'm going to basically link it to the social situation one. It's going to change that. Okay. There we go. We'll say extortion at Cafe Leroux. We'll say bug. We're saying that causes problems. There we go. And we'll basically have a description here in a second. Let's go ahead and save that. So let's actually go in here. Now, because of the fact that I linked it to that, linked it to the template, it's go ahead and add basically all of this stuff is in here. Basically, it's read only because it's still locked. I could change it and edit it if I wanted to say, you know what, in this particular social situation, I don't think charm is going to be useful, so I can pull it out there so I don't not having to scroll past it. Basically, but the advantage is if I want to add another social action in general to basically social actions as a whole, I could go to events and I can edit the template and I can say, go down here and be like new social action. And save that. And now any events that I have which are based off that template now have that new social action automatically added for them. Now note, if I want to basically things that I have unlinked from the template, like the name, for example, and the short description, if I update those because they're unlinked from the template currently, they won't be changed by changes made to the template. So I can change the short description on the template all I want, and it's not going to override the changes I've made here. Basically, so here, basically, we're going to say the mood isn't friendly. It's going to be hostile. So basically, what we're looking at here, and so this is basically now we're going to start talking about how we're basically going to weave this, basically kind of start weaving this in here. So the point of basically this situation is there's an organization causing trouble. There are a couple of different organizations causing trouble for the community that the players basically have based themselves out of. So that is basically, so you've got a kind of a low level thug gang, kind of basically a hacker gang type situation, causing trouble, is causing troubles, and then you have a larger corporation which is taking advantage of that, and they're causing troubles in their slightly more insidious way. So because this is a shorter campaign, we're going to want to direct this a little bit more. We're going to want to have a more clear line of action than I would if this was a longer term campaign. There would be a lot more, hey, let's let the players interact with the community. Let's let them basically maybe do some small favors for people. Let's build them more into this sense of community by doing things for people and start slipping in hints of problems. Like basically, okay, there's a cafe owner, and they feel like they're getting slowly pushed out by some of the they're getting slowly pushed out by basically by the big corporation, which is moving in and gentrifying the area. So what I would likely do if I was doing a longer term campaign is I would have a series of events and things like that, essentially quests that you could do for the cafe, which are dealing with some of the ways that the larger corporation is just trying to make their life difficult. Whether that's, hey, this delivery didn't come in. Basically, now we're short on these things and we're having problems with that. Or, hey, our deposit basically got lost, didn't happen. Can you track down what's causing the problems? Or our sign outside the shop just keeps mysteriously shutting down. Can you figure out what's going on with that? And slowly build in the fact that, okay, hey, there are some small problems which are being caused in this community, but they have bigger reasons behind it. And thus basically let the players interact with the parts of the town that they have said that their characters are interested in. Because when you're doing setup and you're doing your session 0, you're going to have a little bit more time to basically narrow down what your players are interested in. If you're like, okay, I can tell that this particular character really is interested in cat cafes. They put this cat cafe in there. Okay, that's a clear way of getting that player involved, is to do something with the cat cafe. And by basically involving that's going to make them more interested. They're going to be more involved. They're going to be more defensive of that. They're going to prioritize dealing with that situation. And it's a good way of steering them towards your eventual big bad, as it were, by having the big bad doing something which either directly affects them, or indirectly affects them. Basically, like in the case of the cat cafe, it's getting harder for them to get supplies in because people are basically delivery costs are going up their delivery costs keep going up, and they've lost a couple of different shipments, and basically delivery people are refusing to deliver to them, or they've noticed their patronage is starting to go down. Can you look into what that is? And you find out that either there's false advertising, or it's just the number of people is going down because there have been reports of people who come into this area getting beat up, etc., etc. So things like that you can use to involve them. So in this particular case, I'm going to want something a little bit sharper, a little bit more dramatic, to kind of pull the characters in relatively quickly, and make it more of an urgent problem to deal with, rather than just hey, this is something these are just small problems in the community. We don't have to directly we can pick and choose which ones we deal with based on which ones we like. This is an immediate threat. So basically in this particular area, you've got some gentrification and you've got some hacking thugs which are causing problems. So basically kind of mixing those two, if we know the fact that the scenario point essentially sets out that the corporation knows that the thugs are causing problems in the area, but they're using it to their advantage. And so as long as the thugs continue to misuse stuff to give in ways that give them an advantage, they turn a blind eye to it. Or maybe they leave back doors open and things like that. So obviously this is an LGBTQ community. It's the far-flung future of 2020. And it's you still have kind of an isolated area, things like that, which means people's identities and people's livelihoods are probably being seen in this neighborhood could cause problems, or could have social effects on people, that unintended social effects or effects that they didn't want. Yes, the far-flung future of 2020. Yes. It's a retro-futuristic game. So we're in space, we've got space stations, but it's the year 2020. So that we get to play around with exactly what that means. So if you wanted to have somebody like, oh hey, basically there are sites popping up where basically people who are coming to this area are getting basically getting exposed or getting listed or getting named and things like that. That's going to cause problems for these people. So if we want to have somebody come in and kind of basically, we have a cafe, which is basically, so this cafe, so Richard featuring that yours is kind of a giant mind up. Yeah. I mean, it's a fantasy situation, so you know, it works out better that So let's go Cafe La Rose. 2020 was a thing. Yeah, the nice thing is, given that in this world a giant asteroid hit the planet, a medium-sized asteroid hit the planet, causing a global, basically kind of environmental catastrophe in the 1990s. It means that it is less likely that there was an epidemic in the year 2020. That's all it takes, is just a small to medium-sized asteroid. It could have prevented all of this that we had. So they can see that maybe the cure might be worse than the disease there. You're probably not. Running sickness like they're like a ton of ash. Yeah, you know. When they can see that. What's this description for one of our thugs? Who's the owner of Cafe La Rose? I have it, you know, we can just look it up. Boop. Strat, Cafe La Rose. Oh, I did actually import Cafe La Rose in here. I started to, but then I didn't actually put them in here. 1 second, let me fix that. This is why you basically, you do these things so you can actually catch holes and things like that in your system. Terabyte boys, Terabyte boys, Terabyte boys, Terabyte boys. That's why I didn't include it, because Cafe La Rose is included in the main section of the book, not in the section where they're talking about plot hooks. It's fine. This is the Martian Stretch. Which is in the... Hang on 1 second while I back out and figure something out here. Boop doop. Neil Melbourne. There we go. Okay. Cafe Rose there, an LGBTQ library coffee shop. So we mostly have information about the character, not as much about the shop, but we will include what we have. And LGBTQ library cafe shop. Is that an N or an A? I feel like that should be an A. The other Susan Darling. There we go. Because you basically pronounce the letter L with an eh sound. Okay. Yeah, okay. That makes sense. There we go. Okay. So let's also create the character that we're associating with it. Create new object, that's why. Character. While we're in here, we could just go ahead and quickly create Susie as well. Rose. Acronyms tend to get an and by default. Okay. Today I learned voice degree coming in. Okay. Let's do that. I do need to pop open my handy dandy convenience. Remove line breaks tool. There we go. Remove line breaks. Copy the clipboard. Copy that in there. Pull out. Character launches adjacent to that. That's not right. She was inactivated. That's a page number. We don't want that. Was an activist. There we go. That's under goals. There's personality. Call that out. And then there's the perfect. Okay. Excellent. So we save that, and because of the fact that basically we recently just released a patch that actually we had a small bug that when it wasn't automatically associating those, it now actually automatically associates those in. So we have that right there. So I now have that set up. Now I can go back here. Note I didn't have to basically. I opened up basically this page in order to deal with that if I wanted to. Instead, if I realized I had not yet created Cafe La Rose, I could have just clicked create here, click location, and then click to basically character there if I wanted to. If it instead just wanted to create Susie directly, I could have just done both of those from the quick create, which is just right there, and those pop in right off at the top. So I could have those created automatically for me, and then I could just type in the whoop. So I could then associate character Susie. Appears to be to make a denim jacket and jeans outfit look cool by adding it isn't. What's that? What do you call? Pardon me? Alright. Is that a suggestion or something? Actually, I don't think we have phones. my brain automatically went to modern, and I was kind of like, wait, we're actually basically this is retro future. They haven't actually done things like cell phones in here. You have decks and things like. Actually, no, you do have phones. I've seen pictures of phones in here because they have apps. Right. Sorry, brain. One of the big things that they're asking, one of their commentaries on society, because hey, you can't have Cyberpunk without making comments on society, is that everything is gold. Basically, everything is kind of app delivery culture. Basically, I just had the name for what that basically small jobs culture is, and I've now just lost it. But basically, it's got a lot. Basically, so it has a lot of apps for basically that you can gigs. Yes, the gig economy. Yeah, thank you. Basically, comments on the gig economy by everybody is everybody has apps and other things like that, which are basically you have a bounty hunter app, you have a fast food delivery app, and that's the way a lot of the characters can make a little bit of additional money on the side in order to maintain their basically eke out their standard of living, as it were. So they have gigs and they have apps, but they have really terrible web design. Okay. So you can pull out her phone and I like apps. I jump as mozzarella sticks right now. I'm always basically like, I'm always surprised that basically the Applebee's has not in fact just become Applebee's. It's just basically a big thing where they just have apps that give you free appetizers and things like that, or TGI Fridays. They talk about basically like occasionally you'll see them talk about apps, but they don't really combine them well, you know. Not that I need another app to download to my phone. Not that I eat at Applebee's. Let's see. Okay. Do have apps with their reward programs now, but basically, I don't think they actually link apps and apps ever. I mean, if we're going to live in this terrible world where everything has to be an app, at least give me free mozzarella sticks out of it, you know? Or just give me an app that just links directly to mozzarella sticks. I guess that's DoorDash. The potato skins. Happy some little potato skins. Okay, basically. Why do we do this? And closer. That's not. It's close. Okay, I mean, we did it right now. Woo. The players do step in closer. So okay, basically. Electric booster. I do have a bag of banana chips over here. It's vaguely healthy. Um, it pairs well with the Diet Mountain Dew. Yeah, you know. Choices are basically I'm healthy in some areas and not in others. Consider the cards, the second phase of turbines, says face match, and families. Oh, the sunflower seeds. Co-workers. Yeah, I might start with your drawing aggro now. Okay. So. Approachable players. As a teenager got into them. Oh no! That's a good way to lose food. Growing teenage boys and all that. Okay. So we'll set that up. Now, basically, things I can also do here, basically, I've got that thug defined up here. I kind of gave that. So let's actually, rather than have the description in here, let's call that out. We'll call that a creature. We'll call that a Terabyte boy thug. Okay, teenagers can save everything. All right, let's grab some. Let's get basically this is basically so. Let's grab some of the pre-generated Terabyte boy thugs, which the book is nice enough to give us here at the back. Okay, next word should be good. Segfault Steve. I'll be tough guy. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, we'll go with Segfault Steve here. Segfault Steve looks like a good one. So, the hacker is taking to the world. So let's grab his description. Okay. That, I need that. Personality. I love the fact that he's a member of the station's frankly ridiculous flat earth conspiracy theory community. That's right, they're on a space station literally orbiting the earth and still a member of the flat earth conspiracy. He's almost 18? Woo. Okay. Oh, 2 teens for a year starting in May. All right. We added segments. Actually, I wanted to add a little bit more details. There we go. So now we can add. Oops. Go. Creature. Sigfold Steve. So now I've got that in there. Sigfold is difficult. Data that is drones. There we go. Who turns 12? Oh man. It's always weird when you basically have your friends talking about the ages of their children and you realize, oh wait, I remember when they were, that big, and now they're, oh wow, okay. Congrats, you're an old. You win. Kids these days get off my lawn, etc., etc. Okay, so Sigma something to cafe to be easy work. Sigma something cafe to be easy work for the data he's pulling from the hack nearby FX drones. Let's look at Defense 7. Okay. So it's up to me to decide what level these guys are kind of acting at. So I could make this more of an actual character if I wanted this to be an actual kind of fight or situation. I haven't seen the oldest in years at this point. You are correct. It's been a hot second or two, but I mean 2020 did that to all of us. There's also the weirdness of the fact that I have parents who are basically approximately in the same age range, and their kid ages very wildly. Like I have nieces and nephews who are at this age. I have some friends which have kids at this age, and other kids are much older. And then I have other kids whose kids are like at college or graduated college already. It's such a wide range of basically friends with kids. You're just like, oh wait, no, that's right. No, not all kids are the ages of my nieces and nephews. Some of them are much older, even though it feels like all of my friends started off at the same point, but now some of them just have teenagers, and now some of them have college graduates. It's weird. So what's work for their drones? So basically, here I'm going to try to figure out what's going on, basically how I want this social situation to work out. So I can see the different kind of actions the players can take. Like basically, they can bullshit, they can charm, they can interrogate, they can placate, they can embarrass. So basically, we're going to want this mood to start off as hostile because obviously, obviously, this person basically is just looking for a quick buck here. He's not going to be friendly to the characters. So embarrass isn't really going to work here, but so it could be threatened. Basically, lower the mood doesn't work because I like lower the mood. You can always make the situation worse. If you just want to take an action and make things worse, you can just lower the mood. And so basically we got embarrassed, which isn't basically you can see all those. So we'll say two more. And basically pushed out of his comfort zone. Successful social actions such as embarrass, Embarrass, charm, or threaten. Yeah, let's go with those. Only doing words for these points. On. Okay. You always make the situation worse is my permanent fear. What's the worst that can happen? Don't say that. Don't ever say that. Weapon. It's like deploying the Broadwall line. Tempting fate. Living dangerously. It's fine. Yeah, you can always make a deployed product worse. It's easy. I can always push something to prod that will make the situation worse. Those are horrible words to say. After a third or fails third or social action. Let's create these thugs really quickly. Again, that's the great part about this quick create. I can just quickly description. Thug with fashion sounds. Just pull in. Remove some line breaks, copy that, drop that in here. Let's reformat some of this. Whoa, not too much, too far. Whoa, nope, also too far. There we go. Trades, so we don't repeat the same mistake. Cyber, cultural defense. Rude. The Termite's social mood is never friendly. Okay, and then one special action. There we go. Okay. I'll go ahead and bold those just to call them out a little bit more. Let's do that. Okay. Now we've created that. Let's say creatures, thereby boy. I can pluralize it because this is just description text. So if I wanted to call these something different, I wanted to keep the link the same. Once it's been added, I can change that link text up so it's whatever. Let's go ahead and save that. And now you can see. So we have this entire situation set up. I've got links set up to take me to where I need to go, and basically, so I've got all of that now. There are two ways, basically, I'm going to want to have some fallout for this event. So right now, I have this event just in here as just what happens during the event itself. I don't necessarily have it basically what the follow-up is, because obviously something like this is going to happen and you want there to be something that happens afterwards. Basically something that's going to lead them on, something that leads them to a different situation. Obviously there could be different kinds of ways this can proceed, but what I would do in those circumstances is I'm going to add additional events, I've got triggers down here who are triggers or locations or other events that can cause the current event to happen, or they can be things that are triggered off of it. So let's go ahead and say that we um, basically say we'll call it tracking down the extortionist. We'll save that. Now I can associate that. I can also do that in here as well. There's that create trigger button. Let's see, tracking down the extortionist, create trigger. Boom, I've created that. Now I can go to it. I can link back to it if I want. So I have a two-way trigger connection. So it's not just necessarily one way. But you don't have to, because some people may prefer triggers to be more cascading. This goes to this, this goes to this, this goes to this. And some people want more, they want them to be one directional or two directional. So we've got that set up. So note that this also has the social, basically we created it as a social thing, so it could also be that. We can unassociate that if we're like, oh, we don't really want that. Actually, I was going to say, that actually isn't a trigger to that. That's an interesting bug we found. Cool, we'll have to make note of that. Apparently templating gets carried over incorrectly. Yeah, well, that's the reason why we do these things. We take a look at these things so we can track them down, track bugs down. We just released a fix with some of them, so we'll have to obviously gather these up and track them. If you're listening to this and you are actually part of the early access campaign, as a note, we do have, there's two ways you can provide feedback. There is right up here. Basically, if you're in a situation where you just want to make a note of it right away and then get back to work, you've got this leave feedback right here, and you can just quickly put your name, an email address, basically whether or not this allows you to keep working or not. This page is interestingly formatted. I don't know why that check mark is there, but it is. And basically what features you're doing, what features it is, and what your feedback is. And then you can just basically drop us a quick message saying what you found, then go back to what you're working on. We also, if you prefer to have a more lengthy thing or have more of a discussion on what you have, because maybe it's not necessarily a bug or something like that, but it's like, hey, I'm not certain this feature is working the way it's supposed to. If you're a member of the early access team, for right now, you have access to the Discord. And that will that allows you, basically we have a support section on our Discord that basically allows you to basically essentially like the forums of old. You can leave a post that basically talks about the bug, and we can have a discussion over, yes, we think that's important, or okay, here's the way it's supposed to be working, or basically here's the workaround, or here's what we were thinking when we implemented that. So two quick ways that if you're dealing with that, you can do is you can leave feedback without having to go too far. Do remember though, if you go somewhere, you're leaving the page, because that does leave the page, make sure you save your work. Don't want you to lose your work. Unless the bug is affected, you can't save, in which case definitely let us know as soon as you can. So in this particular situation, we're going to be talking a little bit more about going forward. Basically, where do we go from here? So again, because this is it's a one-shot type campaign, we're going to want to be a little bit more railroady than I would if I was running this as a long-term campaign. Obviously, there's GMs will you can have an entire panel discussion, multiple-hour panel discussions on railroading versus not railroading, and basically when do you use it, when do you not use it. But I tend to lean a little bit more towards into railroading things for one-shots. Mostly, your players are kind of going to expect it a little bit more. Your players are showing up for what basically may become something larger, but for this particular thing, they want to be taken. Basically, you're showing up for a one-shot. You kind of want to have the session to keep going. You don't want things to break down because you go off the path too much as a GM just gives to know where they're looking or where things are. You know the fact that the GM is dealing with a limited set. Hopefully, if you are a player, realize that, and thus basically you're kind of expecting a little bit more hand holding, and you don't know exactly what the system is like either. A lot of times when you're running one shots, you're running them with unfamiliar characters and unfamiliar situations, and you kind of want to be given a you want to explore these characters, but you don't want to basically break things because you don't know what you should be doing next. Because if I'm in a Pathfinder adventure, I know what my character could do, I know what talents they have, what's expected, what maybe a little bit about the world and things like that. And thus I can better guide things, and then I will expect to have more freedom to do what I feel like my character should be doing, as opposed to a one-shot where I'm like, oh, I don't know. So, being a little bit more railroady here, I'm going to want to give basically kind of a short list of options here. So let's use a list. Let's just do this game. Let's see. Actually, I do love the fact that basically the leader of the Terabyte Boys gang is an individual known as Fortran Be Good, which is a heck of a name to have for a leader of a hackers guild. Fortran not be good. How could you say that? Fortran is, of all the programming languages I know of, Fortran is definitely one of them. Could be Pascal. I mean, Pascal. Actually, I think I prefer Pascal to Fortran. Fortran and Koei basically handle most of that. Texas joke with it's that COBOL. That's what the grudge should be named. They should all just be kobolds. Fortran is a computer programming language. It is an old computer programming language. It is also, whereas basically the more common programming languages were designed with human interaction to basically implied. Fortran was, unless I'm badly mistaken, Fortran was written by scientists for scientists for scientific purposes, which means it is some of the least friendly syntax and writing and basically debugging and other stuff that you can imagine. It's incredibly powerful because basically the scientists who designed it basically made it to be able to do all the scientist stuff they wanted. Scientist stuff, stuff scientists do. Data analysis, running things like that. And thus, basically, it has some incredibly powerful stuff, but is incredibly unfriendly to work with, let's just say. Cobalt is the same thing, but for businesses, which means it's kind of the opposite end of the scale, where Fortran is written by scientists and therefore is full of obtuse symbology and I'm going to science this. Yeah, basically, basically scientific notation and things like that. Cobalt is written for business professionals, which means it is incredibly. It wants to be written in English as much as possible, down to being properly spaced. But that leads to things like, well, we wrote it in mostly just English, which means that if you don't have periods in the right place or things indented correctly, the entire language the entire thing just breaks and produces 6,000 errors because of that. So they are amusing. I know Cobalt, I don't know Fortran. Fortran quit, handle most of that, Julie just give him names. Yes. Yep. Basically, the original versions of Cobalt basically had a fixed character limit, because you wouldn't have anything longer than that. Don't be crazy. It is incredibly amusing. Knows that they hack, so they had your right of getting information. Actually, Quaid is IMAX, not Fortran. He knows that Fortran. Incredibly pretty. Okay. Information from him. So now it's got to deal with. We essentially know the fact that your parties could have basically a lot of times they may be social, and sometimes they're going to be like basically incredibly good at getting information out, and sometimes they're just going to murder every NPC they see. It all depends on what mood they're in, and basically depending on whether or not you touch a nerve with, hey, you know what, I think this guy's a jerk and I don't really like him being around, so I just want him gone. So realize that you may need alternate methods of getting information to your players. So I'm going to basically kind of essentially have two different routes. You're pronouncing it Cobalt. Well, it is Cobalt. Basically, it's COBOL. It is Cobalt. It's closer to it was probably meant to be closer to Cobalt as in the element rather than the nerdy D&D thing, but you never know. Programmers were involved in it, so I may have had some experience with parties who may have just murdered NPCs rather than not actually. You're basically, to be fair, basically your gaming group is usually not the most murdersome. That's my ex-coworker gaming group who tend to murder first, murder twice, and then maybe resurrect somebody to ask questions later. I'll just put it this way: this is a out of context piece of information which will make sense to people who have played it. But Madame Dusklight got executed, let's just say, in their version of that campaign. Players rights to drugs without getting information. Yeah, apparently, yeah. So basically, it's easy to explain to customers. Um, so the other group leaves or escalate. We have reached the line and no further. So the customers have been complaining about some of the birds. The line must be drawn. Yeah. The hilarious thing is that I read later that apparently, like, Jonathan Frakes would not let him live that down. Like he basically, like, even as soon as he delivered that line, Frakes knew it was a thing. Kept it because I think he's the director for First Contact, and basically just kept kind of bugging Patrick Stewart about it afterwards. Frakes, but yeah, I got. Okay. Back you to the birds. Difficulty. I had basically the problem I have with First Contact is that First Contact, I feel, redoes again the Borg, basically, like, all the Borg stuff that the series already dealt with. It was a really weird, basically, like, Picard's basically problems with the Borg. Like, it feels like every new like implementation of Next Generation feels the need to re-implement that and re-give Patrick Stewart PTSD on it after he's dealt with it in the previous situation. Like, he didn't have PTSD about the Borg really in the series. And then it came back in First Contact, and then it keeps coming back in Picard, which is just weird. Some birds watching. Let's define low difficulty. The system generally nicely has a chart which tells you what your. So we'll make that a 9. Obvious. Okay. So we've got that. Seriously, episode, they touched on a little bit in the fall episode with his brother, but they really didn't do much carry on the storyline episodes until later in the series, and they hit their stride at DS9. Yeah, it's always interesting because part of me, because I'm a Babylon 5 fan, likes to kind of basically around the time Babylon 5 came out is when they really started realizing, oh hey, we could actually do episodic adventures but still have character growth and things like that. They have some of that in Next Generation, but like once Babylon 5 got big, I really feel like DS9 was one of their answers to it, and you start seeing a lot more interesting longer term storylines develop. Farscape is another one that does that. So we've got that. Basically, so we've kind of set up the situation here. Basically, we're chatting while we're doing this. But basically, what I am setting up here is I'm wanting to set up basically where I feel like the party is going to go. And basically and deal with sorry, my brain just basically was flashing between two different conversations. Basically, so where I want the party to go from here, and how I want them to be able to, basically, how I want them to be able to proceed, because I want them to have, I want to take into ideas like, okay, what are some possible ideas? The parties can obviously throw whatever at me, but I'm wanting to like basically put some things in here so I have things I can hint at. A composition error in the last sentence of the first paragraph. There we go. Thank you. He's incredibly paranoid and just keeps it back up to date. Basically, looking for the data on his person at all times. Only backup. Let's save this, by the way. Okay. So basically pushing out. I'm going to jump a little bit because I don't want to rely a little bit too much on this. So in terms of basically planning this out, basically something else I would probably want to do, and this is going to be a little bit basically going out of the basically kind of that more detailed level thing. I'm going to want to kind of plan out some things in the background so I have a general idea of what's going on. So let's quickly create some events in here. I'm going to be a little bit vague just because of the fact that I've got some players in here doing it. So let's go with you stop talking trucks, I stop paying attention. This is Marcia, correct? Yes, Marcia Stretch. Let's see here. Let's go to the warehouse. Let's do that. Code and got information. Let's change that. Let's do that. Go back to events. And then we'll call this one. Okay. So now, basically, I'm going to go into here and I'm going to create a timeline. Let's call this main because I don't have too many other ones right now. I don't need to get fancy with names. So the reason why I created all of those events is that I wanted to add all of them to a timeline. So move into Marcia Stretch. Happens at that one. I can just click here. So Fortran just give us a warehouse. We'll put that up there. Got the blackmail data. Not there. Oops. Let's edit those events. That one's not at 0. That's at 2. And then that one is at 3. There we go. Events. And let's add. Oh, there's the auction. We'll have that at 5. Okay. We're going to say extortion and capital happens at 4. Okay. Actually, I want that more further out than 5. I don't want that closer to 7. I'll put that further out. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm building out this timeline. And the reason why I'm doing that is I want to have basically essentially, this is basically, I built out basically like these events, basically like those 2 events there, the extortion at the cafe and tracking down the extortionists. I'm going to have both of those kind of in, basically in here. Let's go ahead and add tracking down the extortionists just so I can show you exactly what I'm building out here. Oop, that's at 6. I want that at 4. I want that at 5 rather. Oops. Let's do that at 5. Okay. So now I can put some things, I can create intervals, and I can say this one happens from 0 to 4. Game events. So basically I've got that interval called out there. It's a little bit longer. Let's drop to 3. Yep. And then we'll go from 4 to 8. Hold up, player actions. So basically I can see the fact, basically, so now I've got the events which have happened before the game starts, and events basically during the player's time period, and I can add and remove events in here so that I have an easy way of basically, if I'm like, hey, the players just decide to do X or Y, or basically what they're like, because one of the things that this game does is that it kind of basically, it has mission, basically it's a, basically in terms of how it likes to move its plot along, the way it leans into it is that it likes to do it as kind of a heist-based thing, kind of basically somewhat similar to what Blades of the Dark did, in the fact that it focuses in on one event, one thing that is happening as the main thrust or focus of a session or a series of sessions or things like that, and basically puts it into, okay, people, basically your characters are going to plan for this event, they're going to get to it, and basically then a bunch of things are going to happen, and then there's the fallout from it, and then they'll move forward. So essentially what we're going to have here is we're going to have somewhat similar to what we did with Blades of the Dark. We're going to have an inciting incident, which is going to get the players involved in it. Then basically it's going to, once they get through, work through all of that, and it's going to have its own dice rolls and things like that. It's not going to just be me reading text on the page. But my job will be to kind of guide the players towards that event. So like you see the fact that I've got this event way out here that they hold an auction for data and code. And so that's probably what I'm going to guide the players towards, wanting them to, basically that's the main thrust that I'm going to want them to, basically main thrust of what I'm going to want them to do is I want them to interact with that event. How they interact with that event it's going to be up to them. They may treat it as a social situation. They're like, oh, we have to break in, we have to get in, we have to talk. They may treat it as a hacking thing. Oh, we need to hack the event, things like that. They might treat it as a violence, basically a fight type situation. They're like, we're just going to kick down the doors and basically introduce ourselves to everybody there with guns and blazing and swords drawn. Or it could be a combination of all three. It doesn't basically, unlike Blades of the Dark, kind of wants you to basically focus in on one particular one. This one doesn't push as much for that. But it does do something similar in terms of it has a prep period where your players are pushed, basically are encouraged to basically come up with a loose plan. Then they spend time planning, quote unquote, basically prepping, which gives them a resource that they can then basically, which is a prep resource, which they can then use during the adventure to cover stuff that basically, while the players may not have thought of, it is assumed that your characters are good enough at doing this, so that they will keep basically they'll continue basically they will continue in that brain. Basically, your characters would be able to have prepared for that event and taken care of it ahead of time. So prep allows you to spend that resource to cover holes in the plan that wouldn't have been there if the characters had actually spent time looking into it. And what I'm doing with the timeline is I'm setting up that same thing in terms of, hey, basically what's going on while the characters are prepping. Where can basically, so if the players come to me with basically, I want this to have happened during this time period, I have a general idea of what was going on while the characters were prepping, or what happened beforehand and things like that, so I can slot in character prep and keep the adventure going without having to completely improv it, which there's going to be some of that anyway. That's what the GM does. But I want basically having that timeline allows me to give you a better idea of where things could slot in. So all that to say, basically it's complicated, basically, but basically by doing some prep work ahead of time, I can prepare for improv, as it were. And that's the fun part about being a GM, is a lot of it is still improv and things like that, but there are things you can do that you basically, even in the most improv-y of campaigns, tune, feng shui, things like that give you some guidelines or some rails to put basically to keep your thoughts, so you're not trying to plan for basically not having to improv everything, but you have some things you can do with it. So all that to say, basically it's going to be interesting to see how our players handle it. Basically, we've got an interesting group here at LoreLink that runs stuff, and so they always sometimes surprise me with the solutions they come up with things. So basically coming this Friday, March 15th, you can watch basically all the stuff we talked about here, and obviously I'm going to be working on it in the meantime between now and then. Basically on this channel, you can watch us play through this scenario with the LoreLink group. So come back on the 15th. If you're like, hey, basically I'm not great at remembering things, basically, we have multiple ways for you to be able to remember this. One, you can subscribe to this. Well, you can follow this channel here on LoreLink, basically on LoreLink on Twitch, and that will give you an alert when we go live. Basically, if you want another way of knowing that, there's also the subscribe button, and that will give you a way of interacting with us, because that gives you the ability to drop fun emotes and things like that into the chat. Basically, because there will be situations where I'm sure the dice jail emote will become useful. Let's be honest. So, yep. And so basically, if you're watching on Twitch, that's a great way of doing that. We also have the schedule that is basically below me down there. There should be a schedule, which will basically, you're like, oh, what time they mentioned it? I don't want to have to listen to the entire video. Look at that schedule, and that schedule should tell you when some of our upcoming games are. If you're watching this over on YouTube, hi, hello, great. Basically, you have that same subscribe button there and the little bell icon next to it that they tell you to click those and click like, subscribe, and ring that bell. That bell is a notification button that lets you know when things are happening, when we actually go live and things like that. Basically, also, if you're basically subscribed to us on YouTube, we tend to, about a week or so out, drop in coming soon videos, so that you can keep an eye out on those, and those will give you times for it's going to have notification buttons on them as well, that basically if you're like, oh hey, I want to know when this video goes, basically when this video goes live, when this stream goes live on YouTube. So all that to say, basically we have all of that. If you are basically interested in upcoming streams and things like that, we have that on April 1st, no fooling. We actually do, Mike will be back doing his Pathfinder 2nd Edition campaign, Quest for the Frozen Flame, so look forward to that. Next week here on this channel, we will likely have, it's either going to be a video game or possibly we'll have a special guest. I need to track that down, so I'm working those things out. So But if you're curious about what's happening with that, you can follow us on social media. Basically, we are on Blue Sky, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. All those are available, basically depending on which level of social media terribleness you're interested in. All those are obviously available there. We note that Twitter is not on that list. X, whatever, as we have, basically, we used to be on there, but it has turned into even more of a trash fire. And frankly, our social media manager doesn't get paid enough to deal with that. Exactly. So, basically, don't follow. Basically, if you follow us on there and you're like, hey, you haven't guys been tweeting recently, that's because we don't. Follow us on Blue Sky, Facebook, or Lorelink. If you're like, hey, like our social media manager, you believe all that, basically all of social media is, in fact, like 20s dumpster fire there. You can instead basically sign up for our newsletter, and once a month, like for example, this Friday, you'll get a cool little email which will basically give you a rundown of all the cool stuff we've done last month, talking about like streams and things like that we've run. We talk about upcoming events, so cool streams which are coming up, and we also talk about conventions and things like that. For example, the fact that we are proud sponsors of HoosierCon next month, basically end of this month. Sorry, not next month. It's almost the end of the month. Almost next month. The end of this month, we will be at HoosierCon as a sponsor. So keep an eye out. Basically, there'll be more information about that in the newsletter and on social media as time goes on. If you want to know more about HoosierCon, click that link. And basically, if you happen to be in a drivable distance to Indianapolis, we will see you there. You can see us live and in person, and we even have things to give away. More details on that as time goes on. All right, all of that, basically, I think that wraps up all the things that basically all the usual advertisements I give at the end of the stream. So if you're watching, basically, thank you so much for basically staying with us this entire time. What's attending pretty more stuff for Con. Yep. And basically, we'll hope to see you all on Friday. Thanks for watching.